Hello viewers, you join me in New York City, specifically in Hoboken, New Jersey, in my hotel room, and I'm absolutely delighted to have with me Ruben Ortiz, who is the godfather of, of Facebook. Ruben runs the ex-Jehovah's Witness Recovery Group 3
Exclamation point.
Yeah, I need all the hyphenation and all that sort of
Exactly.
But no, it's basically one of, if not the biggest groups on Facebook where people can come on and receive some form of community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's actually, what it composed of ex-Jehovah's Witness is the biggest. There's another one, the Biblical Discussion Group, but that one's composed apparently of Jehovah's Witnesses and ex-Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
But it is certainly the most busiest.
Yeah.
Because the active post numbers are usually about 300 at any given point.
Yeah.
And there's about like maybe 200, 300 comments going up per hour. So that's the latest that I checked.
I think it's a really important service because when I first started out finding my kind of tentative steps as a so-called apostate and trying to figure out what was out there, I was using forums.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with forums; they work very well. But I think with Facebook, you've got a little bit more control over the degree of interaction and what you're doing and that kind of thing. And as soon as I got accustomed to using Facebook in that way, I mean, obviously there's issues with privacy, aren't there? But
Right.
it's a great way of interacting with people.
Yes. It is. It's been like 11 years, and we didn't start on Facebook, but it started on MySpace in 2006.
Right. Oh, well, now we're going into the dark history of.
Yeah. And then we moved, but it's basically been on a social media platform since the beginning.
Right.
So yes, it's a little different.
And sorry, how many members did you say?
Currently a little bit over 9,600 currently.
Right.
Yeah, and I probably by the end of the year we'll see.
Yeah.
I hit the 10,000 mark.
And what I really admire about you is the fact that you've not just anyone can set up a group, but when you've got this sort of group of this sort of nature, it brings with it its own challenges, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah. So you've got a team working with you.
Yes, and I love them very much, and it wouldn't happen without them.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
No.
And we have some guidelines that we all have agreed on, and that has evolved over the years. Because of the nature of the group, things happen, and we've learned our lessons throughout time and what works and what doesn't. So they're really good at maintaining that order, which is needed so that it could create an environment that's welcoming. Especially, we're very preoccupied with the people who are exiting, leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses, and kind of like looking, because it is an open forum, which does brings its challenges as well. But if you only knew how many messages we get from people who are like, I've been lurking. That's the word they use.
Yeah.
Lurking. I've been lurking this whole time. I've been reading this whole time. And a lot of members were lurkers. And then finally they got the gumption to be like, you know what? And then go in and talk to them and tell my story. I've been lurking for a long time, and this is my story now. It's a very common story that we hear a lot.
Do you find, this is the impression I get, and correct me if I'm wrong because you're more of an expert on this than I am, but it's almost as though the way I think of it is like a swimming pool, and you've got the experienced swimmers who've been there a while, who just want to plow along those swimming lanes and get their workout.
Yeah.
And you've got the first time swimmers who are kind of getting in their way a little bit. And it's almost like the group is really set up to help those first time swimmers.
Yeah.
And do you find that there's friction between that demographic and those that are, we know our way around, and actually we want to move the debate onto these other talking points?
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But the majority, I say I couldn't do it without the admins, but the group wouldn't be anything without the members.
Yeah.
Because the ones that are more experienced give so much good feedback to the people who are new,
yeah.
and they're helpers too. So It's like, okay, it's
they're almost like moderators themselves.
yeah,
aren't they?
exactly.
Yeah.
They're giving them words of encouragement sometimes, and they're like, oh, don't worry, this is what's helped me, which is a really good way of expressing expressing yourself when you're helping somebody, because that's one thing that we kind of moderate as well. We don't allow the whole like, you need to do this, you need to do that, get over yourselves. That is invalidation, and that's kind of like, please don't do that here.
Yeah.
What we look for, and what usually happens, and the members are really good about it, is they're telling them, oh, this is what happened, this is what helped me, this might help you.
Yeah.
And it's like a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
So the people who've been out long, and the moderators and everybody helps these people that are new, and that's why a lot of them say, hey, this has helped me.
Brilliant. That's really good. I mean, because you have this kind of idea in your head of people just, no, this is part of my social media experience, and I'm just going to deposit this information, and that's generally how people use Facebook. But your group is more about the experienced swimmers helping the inexperienced swimmers.
Right.
Would that be fair?
Yeah. And that's usually the majority of what happens in a group, and it's really amazing to see. And then you see connections being made, like, oh, I met this person. And then my favorite thing is when they post pictures of meetups, when they meet up and they meet each other, and it's kind of exciting. And I'm like, that always gets me all like mushy inside. I'm like, they're meeting each other.
We're going to a meet-up shortly, so yes. I'm looking forward to seeing, I'll be testing under his eyes to see how dry.
I cry on the inside. I cheer up on the inside. No, sometimes on the outside. But it is really neat to see that. And also, like, it's been like so many years for me, so I've seen it go from like, when I started it was 300 something on my board, and that's pretty much all the ex-Joes.
And that was like the ex-girlfriends, wasn't it? Just to get things moving.
You'd be surprised. Some of those people that were originally are like my best friends. Right. That we've been years friends. Yeah. Some of them aren't there anymore, and that's my attitude. Like, it's there if you need it. If you don't need it anymore, then that's great. And
job done.
Job done.
Yeah.
If you stay and help people, job done.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a win-win.
Exactly.
It's a win.
Exactly.
So it's like, and the more people that people are leave. The last couple years, I've never seen so many people. I'm new. I'm out. It's happening fast. Yeah. And it's a combination of everything. I think this whole thing started, and then everybody started connecting and doing their own things. You did start doing your things. I see a lot of people say, Lloyd, help me out, or his videos help me out. And I think that
I pay them to come on.
But it's interesting because it's like the attitude of like, one way is the only way is not how you help. That's why even though somebody might not like having these guidelines, we have like the group rules, and in the group rules I have a list of other groups, and I'm like, these other groups can help you. If this isn't what's for you, this might be better. Yeah. If Lloyd's video don't do it for you, somebody else's video might do it better. Yeah. Whatever helps you get through it, use it. Yeah. And that's really important.
Oh yeah, you need as many voices as possible, don't you? Because everyone connects with different, ways of different ideas, basically. So that's kind of basically what you're up to in terms of your activism work. But can you tell us a little bit about your background? Can we rewind to how you got into this game in the first place? How did you stumble on the Batcave is what we really want to know.
One summer in 2006.
Ruben's a big Batman fan.
I am. I'm a tattooer. I was married to a Jehovah's Witness, and something happened in the marriage where she ended up, being unfaithful, basically, and. Throughout the years. This was
when you were a believing.
I was a believing Jehovah's Witness. Yeah. Throughout the years, I've always had like little doubts here and there. Let me just preface it with that. I had little doubts here and there, and then in the year, when that happened, and there was a little infidelity, that didn't go all the way, but there was infidelity. The elders came and sat us down, and I told them what happened, and the elders basically blamed me. I mean, that's what they did. They said that because I wasn't being the head properly and giving spiritual food or our family
That's a very
study.
strange way for them to do it.
Yeah. So this was before I even got out the
It's your fault
words.
because you're not doing family worship.
Right, and I was trying to express to the elders that something had happened, but I hadn't gotten to that point. I just said we had problems, and then they started saying that, and then I was like, she kissed another guy, and then they were like, oh, but they continued with me, and then they're like, well, it wasn't exactly fornication, so I'm there, just saying, okay, this is my bad. So I continued with her, trying to work things out, and she ended up leaving with the guy and committed fornication and all that stuff. But we had a really bad marriage, and I kind of I just want to say right now that I don't look back on that as something bad,
right?
Because it was a result of being given this really bad advice that you're taking and to fix your marriage, and so I'm trying to do this spiritually their way, and it wasn't what we needed. We shouldn't have been married in the first place.
No.
So when she did that, we broke up.
How old were you when you got married?
24, about
Right.
25, like a month before my 25th birthday.
Because quite often people find that they're almost rushed into marriage because that's the only way basically you can.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
if it was different, I wouldn't have married her, because I would have known better. But it was rushed,
Right.
because you're in your mid-20s and you want to have sex already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's an honest thing. So,
Yeah. So the infidelity, you're able to look back on it now quite philosophically and think, well, we were wrong for each other anyway.
yes,
Yeah.
I mean, it should have never happened.
Yeah.
So that isn't what really did it. It was afterwards when I started trying to be spiritual again. I ended up doing something that wasn't spiritual, of course, because I was a California witness, and if I can go on and on about California witnesses, but it's a little bit more liberal than other parts of the country.
Right.
And so I hooked up with an ex,
Mm.
and I committed fornication.
Right.
Right, and so this was the beginning of the end, because I sat at the end of the bed. And I sat there, and I'm like, I don't feel guilty. I felt absolutely no guilt. Like, I was like, I didn't know why. No, I was like, I should feel bad because I sinned against Jehovah and everything, but I feel vindicated.
Right.
This was fantastic. I was like, yes. And I'm like, and that made me think, maybe I should back off of this for a while and really think about it, because if this is the truth, why don't I feel guilty?
Yeah.
And later on, I was doing my thing and partying and doing this stuff, and I was with another witness, because I was kind of like half in, half out. I would go to the meetings, but I was really doing my own thing.
You were kind of on the periphery.
Right.
Yeah.
I would go to a meeting just to show face.
Yeah.
And I changed congregations, and then I would show face in that new congregation. One of the people that I was doing something with reported herself to elders and felt guilty.
Right.
And then she confronted me in front of a bunch of people and said, why would you do this? Why would you do this? You're such a hypocrite. And I was like, you know what? I am a hypocrite. So I spoke.
But it's crazy. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses watching this will think, well, I can fully understand how that's come about.
Yeah.
But if you're a non-Jehovah's Witness, you're thinking, why so much drama over two people having sex?
It's insane.
Yeah.
So what happened was I told a friend.
Yeah.
What happened, and my intention of I'm just gonna go to elders. I didn't feel guilty,
Yeah.
but I'm just gonna get because it is kind of messed up what I'm doing. And she said two words that changed my life. she said, the Jehovah's Witnesses are like Big Brother. Now, I always was fascinated by that story. I've always been fascinated by that story.
George Orwell's 1984.
Yeah, I was fascinated by The Matrix. I was fascinated by 1984, Animal Farm, all those books about totalitarian societies. I love those books. And when she said Big Brother, Lloyd, I swear it was a flash of light. Like somebody hit my, you know, you've been hit. You see that flash? It was a flash, and then every single doubt that I ever had just came back over the years that I've had. Like when they changed the generation definition in the 90s, and then I think it was 94 or it was in the middle 90s. Everything, boom, 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 and I'm like, I sat there and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what it is, and it was over at that moment. It was no guilt, nothing from that point on.
So you've kind of had this epiphany. Where to next? I mean, did you do any research?
Yes, that's the first thing. My first thought was, okay, I know it's bogus, but I've seen too many people leave and then come crawling back, right? So I was like, I need to do this research and find out for myself.
Yeah.
I went to a Barnes and Noble, and this is very strange, but I guess maybe somebody ordered the book, and I found Crisis of Conscience by Raymond France, and I was in the religious section, trying to do research, and I'm like, oh, so I took that book home and I devoured it. And
what year would this have been?
This is the 2004, 2003, 2003, 2004, on there. I just devoured it.
Yeah.
It was the 2002 edition, the new one at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and then I had my volumes, so some of the stuff that was in there, I would go and check the volumes to double check. And I already had that knowledge that it was bogus, but I just needed to be able to explain it. And
it crystallized all of these fears that you had.
Right. And it was done. That was then there was other websites, and at the time not so many as now.
Yeah.
I didn't have J3 Survey back then, but we had even Randall Waters.
Right. So you had Free Minds.
Free Minds. Heidi Norberg had a page back then as well, and
was it pre-JW Facts?
Yes, it was pre-JWFacts.com. So I had that, and I had those, and that was it. It was done.
Brilliant.
It was done, and never a moment of doubt, never a moment of I missed this, or anything like that.
Well, I can only thank you because the thing is, you've gone through that journey yourself of waking up, and here we are in 2017 with all these years behind you of basically passing it on and helping others through running the group. So I can only thank you for turning a hand to helping other people out. Yeah,
well, I appreciate the support as well. You always speak highly of the group and what we do, and what you do is important too. Information is really important, so keep it up.
We were talking before, weren't we, about activism, because you do hear sometimes people say, well, nobody gets woken up, they can only wake themselves up.
Right.
And while that's certainly true, you do need to have the willingness to kind of move in that direction. You do still need to have resources, kind of.
You need information.
Yeah.
You need information. You need support. Not everybody went through what I went through. I know that the moment I did something, I didn't have any doubts, but there's so many people that do, and each experience is so similar. And I don't have the same circumstances as somebody else. Some people have it way worse than I did. You know what I mean? But over the years, I've learned that one thing that is very powerful is the knowledge that you're not alone. That is the biggest thing. You are not alone. That's huge. More than anything, any research or anything. Because every time I tell you, 10, 11 years, same thing. I'm not alone. I'm not the only person that feels this way. I'm not the only person that went through this. I mean, you feel like you're nuts because some of these people, that's all they know. They know, or their whole families They have no one. They're left alone, and their whole family believes this. What does that make you feel like? It makes you feel like you may be nuts. And then you go talk to somebody that's not ever been a Jehovah's Witness, and they're gonna be like, well, that's kind of weird, right? Well, maybe they're another religion that's kind of similar, and they're like, well, that's your family's religion, or they'll side with your family, and they don't know what it's like to have gone through that specifically. And Jehovah's Witnesses are a very strange kind of cult because they're very sophisticated. Usually cults are like small, and then they have you in an enclosed area. You can't get out. You don't know anybody else. Jehovah's Witnesses control you while you're living in the world. You're surrounded by people. You go to work, you go to school, you're surrounded by people that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, but you are still being manipulated and controlled. They teach you how to keep yourself in a prison. You don't have to be confined.
Yeah.
You're mentally confined. And they're pretty huge for a cult. They're pretty huge. I mean, like 8 million publishers now. That's pretty big compared to other groups that are like the Jehovah's Witnesses. So they got the science down pretty good. So it's really important that we keep doing this because there needs to be an outlet.
Absolutely. One thing that I also hear from time to time is people say, what are you even thinking about trying to wake up Jehovah's Witnesses with your activism work? And it's interesting, just kind of latching on to what you said before, a lot of people don't seem to understand that due to the nature of the cult, a lot of the people that certainly I'm reaching out to, and arguably you as well, they have stopped being Jehovah's Witnesses a long time ago. That's how potent the indoctrination is. I get emails from people saying, I've been disfellowshipped for 20 years, and only now am I awake.
Yeah, I've heard that story hundreds of times. Although it seems like that's reducing. Like that's less and less as time goes by. With more information, that's why it's important, the information to be out there, because people spend less time believing it than they used to. But talking about people who still believe in it and are out, that's a rough crowd. That's a rough crowd. They're probably most likely have not researched it.
No.
Or what I've noticed is that a lot of the Jehovah's Witnesses that are emotionally invested, and rather than know their doctrines, those are really hard to reach as well.
You sometimes get the impression that in their heads they're thinking, well, I may be disfellowshipped, but at least I'm not an apostate,
No, I'll tell you this. There's a group of people there's a lot of them that are disfellowshipped, and they're the really roughest crowd to communicate with.
Really?
They will curse at you because they feel like they can, because I'm not Jehovah's Witness. They'll threaten you because they feel that they can, because they're not Jehovah's Witness, but they believe it. And somehow in their minds, it's like, I'm justified. I'm going to burn in Armageddon, or I'm going to die in Armageddon, but at least I know it's the truth. So screw you and all the other stuff. I'd much rather talk to Jehovah's Witness, to tell you the truth. I've had conversations with Jehovah's Witness where I have a great time talking to them. It's just, they're really nice. And I'm like, oh my God, I remember that was that guy. And I'm like, I talk to them in the subways, and I usually approach them and I don't tell them right away that I'm just fellowship apostate witness. I'm like, oh, my mom's witness, absolutely true. You know what I mean? So that way I could talk to them, and I'm not there I tell them my ideas. We talk about my ideas, like, oh, well, I'm this. You believe in God, but you're talking to me about God. I don't believe in God. Let's have a conversation. And that's how I approach it. And then we have the conversation like that, and I'm like, well, I know this about the organization, because my mom's doing this. That's how I like to talk to them.
So do you engage quite frequently with...
Not all the time, but every once in a while, if there's time, if I have time. But I'm always nice to them. I say hello, whatever. I think it's important. That's really important too, to show them that there's a human being here. I have emotions that I feel, and this is, if there's a Jehovah's Witness watching, we care. I mean, we put ourselves out there. And sometimes we're insulted and whatever, but it's hard. You know what I mean? Even by ex-witnesses sometimes. You know what I mean? That don't agree with you. But it's because you're doing this because you care about it. You care. We were all there. You're still there. I mean, it's a labor of love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
It's good though that you're trying to kind of destroy the stereotype of the unreasonable, abusive, foaming at the mouth, mentally diseased,
right,
apostate.
Yeah, you don't want to give them that impression because then that they're right. You know what I mean? Satan.
I mean, that's what we are like, but we keep it very well considered.
Not to say that, like every once in a while, you do get and you do have an exchange of ideas. You do disagree. People disagree. But that's another thing. You come from an organization that everybody thinks the same and they agree on everything. Now, when you're out, you have to learn to disagree.
Yeah. You
have to learn to okay, you know what? I don't agree with you. And then what? What are you gonna do? Yeah. You're gonna crucify me because I don't believe it?
Impasse.
Yeah. It's a learning process.
Yeah.
You learn first that it's not the religion, and then you learn to live in a real world where people have different opinions, where people
and there isn't compulsory friendship, and people are different people.
Right. You don't have to be friends with somebody.
Yeah.
You could just be like, hey man, that's all you. I respect you. You go that way, I go this way.
Yeah.
That's actually loving. You know what I mean? Instead of the whole, you could love somebody enough to be like, or even if like you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're somebody and somebody is emotionally abusing you or anything, distance yourself. You know what I mean? You gotta love yourself.
Yeah.
And then everything becomes easier. But.
So we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah,
my final question, you mentioned before about lurkers on the ex-Jehovah's Witness Recovery Group 3, and
yes.
What I'm interested in is if you could give them a message, if you could kind of go back into what it's like to be in that mindset, and you could reach out to them with a message, what would it be?
You're not alone. That's it. You're not the exception. We all have different stories, but there are people out there that have very similar stories to you. I might not have the very similar story to you. But there's hundreds, thousands of people that do. And once you are able to break free from that, you can be happy. It's just a matter of time, and you gotta love yourself and be empathetic with yourself too. I mean, that's another thing that I like to say to people. Like don't be so rough on yourself. Like, it takes time. We were, like if sometimes that slips out or sometimes you have doubts, I always think of Pavlov's dogs. You know what I mean? Like, ding, 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 saliva. You see something on the news, Armageddon? You've been fed that since you were a child. The software in your mind is programmed. You know what I mean? So if that happens, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're only human.
Yeah.
And so you just love yourself and keep pushing forward and research. That's really important.
Yeah, that's what I try to say as much as possible. The 3 R's: research.
Yeah, it's once you, I tell you, if you read Crisis of Conscience, right, and you believe it, wow. There's nothing I can do.
I don't
to convince you.
I'm not convinced that's possible. I've heard people claim that they are carrying on believing even though they've read it, but no, I'm not buying it.
And I have a friend that I haven't spoken to a few years, but he was one of the first people that were in my group. Back in that day, he was like 20. He read Crisis of Conscience and went back. He didn't stay when he knew. But if you're going back, you have to know. If you're doing your research and you go, it's more than just knowing it's the truth. Because the truth will crumble at the feet of research. Yeah. The truth will crumble.
Exposure to the light. So
a blinding light. Their blinding light, and then you have the real light, or their darkness, or whatever you want to call.
Well, I can only thank you once again for
thanks
everything, and thanks for speaking to me.
Yeah.
And Ruben and I are going to head off and get a drink now. So
because we're like that. We're gonna go drink and get really drunk.
Well, maybe. Wish you could join us, but for now, thank you very much for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. But thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching too.